In this problem, we're told a 23-kilogram suitcase is pulled with a constant speed by a handle at an angle of 25 degrees above the horizontal. If the normal force exerted on the suitcase is 180 newtons, what is the force F applied to the handle? So what you want to do first is draw what's going on. So we have this 23-kilogram suitcase, and we know we're going to be pulling it 25 degrees above the horizontal with some force F. And that's what we're trying to solve for in this problem. We're also given that the normal force, right, is going to be equal to 180 newtons. So that's basically what we're given, and so the next step is to draw the free body diagram of what's going on. So we already went ahead and labeled these. So we have the force that we're going to be pulling on it, right? So some force F, it's going to be going 25 degrees above the horizontal. We have this normal force, which is a force just acting upwards, right, which we know is 180 newtons. And then we also have to label the weight force, which is just equal to mg, right? We know it's going to be going downwards because it's going to be pulling it towards the earth. So now that we know this information, let's talk about how we're going to solve this problem. So the way we're going to solve it is by using Newton's second law, which basically tells us the net force is equal to the mass of an object multiplied by its acceleration. Okay, but in this case, notice that it's going to be moving at a constant speed. And if something's moving at a constant speed, that means there's going to be no acceleration, meaning the sum or the net force in this problem is just going to be equal to 0, right? But the net force is the same thing as the sum of the forces. So in this problem, the sum of the forces is going to be equal to 0. But the way we're going to solve this problem is just by focusing on a specific axis. So when you take the sum of the forces, you always focus on one specific axis, and the one we're going to choose is the y-axis. The reason this is because we know that we know forces in the y. We don't really know the forces in the x, so we're choosing the y. So what we're going to do is say the sum of the forces in the y are going to be equal to 0, right? Because we're moving at a constant speed. And then what we want to do is just write out all the forces in the y. So what forces do we have acting in the y? We have the normal force, right? And when you label these, right? So when we add them up, we want to make sure that if they're going upwards, they're positive, and if they're going downwards, they're negative. So when we say 0 equals, and then we add up the forces. So we have the normal force is going upwards, so we label it positive, and we know it's 180 newtons. So equals 180. We have the weight force going downwards, so we want to minus mg, right? Minus mg, and then we also have one other force. So we have the force F, right? But we're doing this in the y-axis. Keep that in mind. So we're not going to just write F because that's at an angle. So what we want to do is take the y component of it because it's along the y-axis. So how do we find the y component of this? So if you draw like a triangle, F is the hypotenuse, and then the angle is 25 degrees. And what we're trying to do is find this side here, which is the y component. So the way you do it is by using trig. And we know the sine of an angle, in this case it's 25. Sine is opposite over hypotenuse. Hopefully you remember trig, but the opposite side is y over f. And so if you do this, right, multiply both sides by f, you get what the y component is. It's f times the sine of 25. So now when we plug it in here, we say plus f times the sine of 25, right? That means what we have is f, right? This is going to be the y component of the force F that we're pulling at. And what you should notice now is that we have m, right? We have the mass, we have g. And so the only only variable left in this equation is F. And that's exactly what we're going to be solving for. So that's how you do it. So now what we got to do is just manipulate this equation. So we can add these to their side. So you get mg minus 180 is equal to F times the sine of 25, right? All I did was add this to the other side and then minus this. And so what we can do is divide by the sine of 25, and you're going to get F. So keep in mind, I didn't write what mg are, but keep in mind m is just going to be 23, right? So I'll just cross it out, 23, and then g is just going to be 9.81, right? This is just the force as a result, or not the force, but the acceleration due to gravity. So now what you want to do is just plug this in. So 23 times 9.81, then you want to minus 180, and then you want to divide by the sine of 25. And make sure you're in degrees when you do this because they gave it to us in degrees. So when you do this, you're going to get F equals 107.969. I'm just going to round to 108. So it's going to be about 108 newtons. Just make sure you round however your teacher wants you to do. But yeah, F is going to be equal to about 108 newtons. So yeah, this is going to be your answer. And hopefully you found this useful.